A name in the emulation handheld sphere which has gained a positive reputation is TrimUI. The TrimUI brick was a very well received device, comparable with the Miyoo Mini Plus, and that was followed by the TrimUI Smart Pro, which is a horizontal device, 16 by 9, that was also very much applauded. So when Litnix reached out to me and asked if I wanted to check out the TrimUI Pro S, very Xbox naming system of them here, which is the TrimUI Pro but with an upgraded chip, I said, you know what, let's see what the fuss is about. I'm your cool uncle Marissa, and today we are going to be reviewing the TrimUI Smart Pro S. If you hear a dog barking, please do excuse me. Not my dog. One of our neighbors got a dog, I guess, and they just like leave it outside instead of playing with it. Which, you know, I bet a lot of you do with your emulation handhelds too, huh? Clever segue. As per usual, we have our regular disclaimers, which is my reviews are not seen by anyone prior to publishing. I don't get paid for it. All my opinions are my own, and the perspective I'm coming from when it comes to reviewing emulation handhelds is one of someone who prefers original hardware. So I tend to look more for things like whimsy and the joy of using an emulation handheld more so than specs. So if you do want a spec heavy review, there's a ton of other reviewers who focus on those. But if you wanna go off like just how does this feel as a gaming device, you're in the right place. So speaking of just aesthetic and ergonomics, Litnix actually sent me 3 colorways. They sent me this green one, a red one, and a DMG themed color one. And I have to say the one I picked actually had been the green one. And I do like this green, but I do wish that they did a bit more with the buttons because I feel like the black buttons kind of push back the green, and it's kind of similar with the red. The black buttons push it back. So of the 3, the DMG colorway ended up being my favorite because it has some variety in color. I do think the yellow one looks pretty neat. That's been a popular one. It also obviously has black buttons, but it's got a bit of a, I guess, bumblebee vibe, as opposed to like green and black doesn't necessarily evoke anything to me. And the red is too much orange leaning to evoke like the goth mall kid, emo mall kid, red and black vibe. But I do appreciate that they did come out with multiple colorways that aren't just black and white or black, white, and gray. That's always a step forward in the right direction. But yeah, the design is very PSP-ish. You know, you got the rounded sides, the flat top, you got 2 sticks though, instead of the 1 nub. And it is capable of playing PSP, and that's kind of a good thing because it's a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. Not ideal for retro gaming unless you're playing widescreen hacks. I love the ergonomics of it. Like, look, I just love that I can hold it in my hand like this. I feel like this is like imagine if this was what the Switch Lite was. That would be amazing for me. I know not for everyone, but like this is kind of my ideal size for a handheld that can run more complex games. And then when it comes to the buttons, I really, really like this D-pad. This is a really wonderful D-pad. It's precise, feels nice. They are tactile buttons, but they're not super loud. They give a nice bit of feedback to your thumb and bones, but it's very gentle. It's a very soft tactile, kind of reminiscent of like Game Boy Advance SP. Face buttons are similar, very high quality button feel, an absolute pleasure to use the buttons. The joysticks, on the other hand, this is just kind of like, I feel like everyone's using the same joysticks. They're a little low for comfort, but I feel like for what it can play, it's generally manageable because if in terms of emulation, if you're just going up to like PSP, you know, again, PSP was a D-pad heavy console. Yeah, you had your little nub, but that little nub was not necessarily any more comfortable than this. And I say that as someone who's like, PSP is like one of my favorite handhelds. The buttons on the top, the quality feels a little lower. They feel a bit hollow. On the bottom, there's a function switch that you can assign to different things, like turning on the LEDs, turning off the LEDs. By default, it is set to like turn on performance mode. These little start and select buttons and stuff, they feel nice. There might not be much inside on these sides, and that's why we get that hollow feeling. Shoulder buttons also feel great, especially for, again, what it is. Wonderful thing is that it has a headphone jack. Yay! When emulation handhelds don't have headphone jacks, it like feels like an extra insult. This is a bit of a nitpick, but the spring in the SD card slot is really intense. You have to really get your nail in there, and then the spring has a lot of power. So when I have removed the SD card, sometimes it's just gone ping! But luckily I found it each time. Yeah, in terms of ergonomics, I love this thing. And so talking about what it plays, obviously it plays all your standard stuff. However, the standard stuff is 4x3 content, again, unless you're playing widescreen hacks. So it looks kind of awkward. You have a lot of space, and it doesn't bring me personally joy to play 4x3 content on it. So where does this really shine is it really shines with PSP and Portmaster, especially if you put it on performance mode. Like performance mode, I feel like should be your default if you're playing those. It seems not to have a problem playing PSP games. It's the right aspect ratio for it. It has all the right buttons and button feels for it. I really like playing Portmaster on this. I stuck Pizza Tower on it, which for some reason the Pizza Tower port, the only quirk of that is that Peppino is wearing all yellow instead of white, but you know, it's Portmaster. Celeste, obviously not the Pico 8 version, the regular one. It runs fine. All of the games that are on Portmaster that I've tried have run well. Paired with the size and ergonomics of it, it feels like a really nice alternative to play some of these less graphically intense, more platformer-y type games in comparison to like, say, with a Switch Lite. I feel like they're comparable. Personally, PSP, I love PSP. There's nothing that a PSP doesn't have that I feel like I need. You know, like I'm personally not stoked or anything about the PSP IPS screens. Those have issues with affecting battery life as well as they change in saturation and things. I actually really like the scan lines on some PSP models. So I would not personally be playing PSP games, but if you do want something larger than the PSP, this is quite a good one. In fact, if someone was like, what would you like a modern handheld to look like? I would be like, yeah, like this approximate size and shape with better joysticks. But instead they just keep getting bigger. Let's talk about quickly like the custom firmware options and the firmware options. So the regular firmware it comes with is fine. The only thing was that it does lack Portmaster, which looking at this and finding it to be wonderful for PSP and Portmaster, it kind of sucks to just not have that. Litnix sent me the CrossMix Surwish OS card. Typically when you hear about these Surwish cards, you have the Onion OS Surwish card and the CrossMix OS Surwish card. People are like, okay, so they're just putting their name onto the custom firmware that someone else has made. For a long time, I agreed with that. However, with the CrossMix, it's different. So don't format your card like I did. It is a version that is far more recent than what's available on GitHub. I don't know if the guy who makes CrossMix worked with Surwish or if they like did it themselves. But yeah, if you download the CrossMix OS that's available online on GitHub, it's not gonna work. So if you do get CrossMix Surwish, don't format it, back it up, and then you can like do whatever you want. But yeah, you will run into a lot of issues if you use the one that's available on GitHub. Say you want to build your own custom firmware card, you don't want to buy the Surwish CrossMix OS, there's Nully. I quite like Nully. I really like the aesthetic of it as far as custom firmware that's like multi-device usable goes, because my favorite is always going to be Onion OS, but Onion OS is specific to a certain device. But I like Nully, and you do a one-time payment if you want to beta test any of their stuff, and you basically are able to do so forever. It's not a monthly charge or anything like that. And so I had done that way back when for the Ambernic 28XX, and so I was like, let's give the Nully build a try. Now the Nully build also has a lot of issues. It is in beta. It's at a point right now where, I mean, I don't know where it'll be by the time I publish this video, but as of today that I'm recording the video in the first week of March, you can only flash it with Linux or Android. You can't flash it with Windows, and you have to reflash each build. So it's a bit of a process, and each new build obviously is not necessarily going to be better objectively than the previous build, because they're still testing things out, they're still trying things out. But I think that not the most recent build I have, but the build prior to that is pretty perfect. So I would definitely keep an eye on Nully for a custom firmware option. Looking at the cost of the TrimUI Pro TrimUI Smart Pro S, what would be an alternative that is kind of similar? One thing that people bring up is the Mangmi Air X. This guy is around $100 more if you get it with the micro SD card and custom firmware, less without, with the baseline being around $100. And the Air X is also around $100. Similar form factor, a bit more Switch Lite leaning in that it's more rectangular than like this like roundish shape, but it runs Android 14, and Android is more flexible than Linux in a lot of senses, and arguably can do more. So that has been a thing that I've heard people say of like, why get this when you could get that? And yeah, I mean, sure, I agree. I think if I had to pick between the two of them, I would go with this simply because I really don't like Android handhelds. Like, I hate the way they look. Feels like a phone. I know there's custom launchers that you can install. Cocoon looks really promising and really cute, but ultimately, once you want to actually like do stuff, fix things, ultimately it's an Android, and you can tell. And it's not that I have something against Android. I have an Android phone. It's just like, I'm like, Android is for phone, not for game. So yeah, it's a very shallow thing on my end. So it would come down to really just ergonomics, what you want to do with it. And if you have a preference for Android or Linux. My conclusion is that this is a perfectly capable device, great for PSP and for Portmaster. It feels nice in your hands. It has a wonderful D-pad, which also, like playing Pizza Tower, gives you an idea that it's a good D-pad, because Pizza Tower, that is a D-pad game. You gotta have a good D-pad for that. So I think if you're after something that has these features, this is good. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't necessarily get like an unconscionable amount of joy from it, but that's okay. Again, you're talking to someone who prefers original hardware, and if I had to pick between this and a PSP, I would pick a PSP. If I didn't have a Switch Lite and have like all of the games I'm interested in playing Portmaster on, this would probably be a more interesting and attractive option to me as well. Overall, yeah, I think it's great. I think that who knows how much the prices are going to be by the time this comes out with all the RAM pricing nonsense. If you want, you can use my affiliate code and grab one from Litnix. You could grab something else from Litnix. Doesn't really matter. The code is the same. It's in the description. Otherwise, a huge thank you to my Ko-fi supporters. Their names are going up and down. If you would like to support me on Ko-fi, you can be a Nerdview Advance for $2 a month, and you get access to all of my game reviews. I do play games very slowly and in large intervals, so it's not like gonna be like weekly podcast time with Marissa, but I also will sometimes post random write-ups of little projects or videos of stuff that I don't find like YouTube worthy, but they're like, I don't know, I want to share it. Another thing you might have heard is my cat in January was in the ICU for a week. He's much better now. Unfortunately, I went into like $15,000 of debt. So I have a GoFundMe where I am trying to chip away at that. Thank you so much to everyone who's donated already. And if you would like to donate, there's a QR code here somewhere, and also the link in description. And I'm also doing fairly regular Twitch streams as a means to help fundraise. So any money I make on Twitch is gonna go towards that. And also just if you wanna come to the streams and just help boost the GoFundMe through that. We've done some really fun stuff on stream. I've played a bit of Fallout New Vegas, but also I've done some modding and repair. I repaired a Wii disk drive, I modded a Game Boy Advance, worked on a PSP Go. And if you want to send something also to be worked on stream, you can email me or DM me on Discord and we'll talk. My outro is getting really long. So if you're still around, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and don't forget that you are always welcome at Cool Uncle's house, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.